Greetings. How are you doing, Mom?
I'm fine. How are you?
I'm doing good. Please excuse the mask. I'll take it off. The reason I had it on is I didn't want to put it on camera, and it ended up becoming a bandana. But let's not joke about that. These things happen.
Absolutely.
How are you doing, sir?
I'm fine. How are you doing up there?
I'm doing good. Thank you very much.
How are the kids? How are the kids?
Kids are doing well. The kids are doing well. They're growing. You still haven't met one of them, but you'll meet them soon.
Yes.
Once everything opens up,
Yes,
once the streets are open again, once the airports are open, we'll definitely make that happen.
Okay, I will definitely. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing the new one.
No,
Yes.
thank you. I think first and foremost, welcome to you. This is the first time that we have a video call ever. Just to make the record clear. And I appreciate your time. I know you are a busy family man and whatever else that you're doing at this point in time. But thank you very much for your time. She didn't pass away. She didn't die. She committed suicide in the year 2000. It was late morning. I was minding my own business. This would have been in Pretoria, now known as Tshwane. Minding my own business, and one of the staff members came running in frantically to get my attention. Please come with me. There's something going on that we need you to help us. I'm like, okay, cool. What's the story? I'll follow the lady. I'm not going to mention the name. And I get to your room, your bedroom, and you obviously you were not there. I'm not sure if I recollect you were in the country, but possibly not in the province. I don't remember that particular detail. So they bring me to the room and they say, look, just brace yourself. There's something that's going on here. We're not sure what the situation is, but we need you to come in and assist us. So when I get into the room, and then when I look to the right, Mom was laying on the bed. She wasn't responsive. She was non-responsive, frothing at the mouth. And, I don't think people were aware of what was going on. She wasn't speaking. And, we're trying to understand what's going on, until my attention was brought to a note that was in the dressing room, where all the dressing room was a walk-in closet. I'm trying to read the note, which I do, and the contents of it, are the contents of it. Some of it did make some newspapers. How, I don't know, but that's what happened. I walk into the room. I've still got the note in my hand, and all of this happened maybe within a period of 7 to 10 minutes. And paramedics arrived, and before we all assisted in getting a mom onto the stretcher, and onto the ventilators and everything. At that time, I'm not sure what the position was. I may be wrong. I stand to be corrected. But Reverend Frank Chikane walked in. I'm not sure if you'd remember that he must have been minister in the presidency. I'm not sure. I will need to be correct at the.
He was a DG.
DG in the presidency.
Yeah.
Yes, DG in the presidency. So he walked in, and obviously he's known to the families. He's had a long history with the family. And I remember he grabbed my shoulder and like, yo, chill, you'll be fine. We're dealing with the situation. I'm confused, as any youngster would be. And I remember he took the note, and we almost had a little arm wrestle match for the note. The last time I saw that note was when he took it from my hands. And then from there, Mom was moved out, stretcher, ambulance, and that was basically the last time I'd seen her before she passed away. So I'm just giving you this recollection. This is something that till today feels like it was yesterday. It's traumatic, it's a traumatic experience for anyone, I guess. And over time, we all deal with things differently. I've got one way of dealing with things, others have got a different way, but it's dealt with in its entirety. But we keep it in the back of our minds, and we miss her wherever she is. I'm sure she's resting in peace. So I just wanted to convey that experience from my side, which I've never conveyed to you, and my experience with that situation and how it unfolded from then up until now. We're cool. We're in a good place. Let me speak for myself. I've dealt with the tragedy, and that's just all I wanted to relate from that loss in my life.
And perhaps it's important to do so. I remember you in particular because you just switched off. You were not talking. I knew that this was in you. I think your brother Sad was a little bit bigger than you are, and was also affected very deeply.
Yes.
Because I realized a home without a mother, the man can't live there, absolutely. It's a difficult one. I just wanted to mention that, which made me feel the gap and the realization that, look, the mother is important in the home. It's one of the biggest blows as well. Here was a young man, actually growing, very bright, really with a big future. But he had to die. Had an ailment that you can control until you are very old. But he passed away. Very suddenly. Some of the blows that I've stomached are the blows that are as a result of my participation in the struggle. At times, I say, I can't blame myself because I took a decision to fight for my country. And therefore, some of the things have come as a result of that. Now that I know what took him is what pains me even more. Because I now know that it were people who were trying to kill me or to reach me, but who were finding it difficult to reach me, who then took a decision to create or make something that will pain me. And I now know, and I think it's important that maybe I become emotional on this one, because I wanted to take your life as well. It was a failure to take your life that then they went to the young man. And in a manner that very cruel, because they interfered with his treatment. In order to poison him, they went through his treatment and indeed found him. Now I know. So the pain has not just doubled, has tripled in me, that here I lose for the first time my child who had many years to live, but it was in the place of me that they could not get to. So it's a very painful thing.
It gets to a point where now we almost lose you. So from Vusi's So after Vusi's passing away, I think the next emotional event that we had in our lives was we've lost these people, and it's just the circumstances were, and as you've explained, the Vusi one, when it comes to light, it just adds a whole level of just trauma and upsetness. But that's a conversation for another day. It gets to a point where now we almost lose you. So here we are, we're faced with the loss of one of our mothers, the loss of one of our brothers. Now we face the loss of our our only father. So I'm going to talk through the events as well, because that's the only thing that I can do, is how I fit into it and the view from my experience of it. Leading up to a time where we'd understood that something was going on. Your health was deteriorating, and you'd know it better because you were experiencing it. And the usual thing that you do, you carry on with life as if nothing's wrong, and you deal with your trauma and your challenges in your corner, because you're the kind of person that doesn't like making your problem anyone else's problem, which is something that which is an approach that I've developed, and that's the angle that I use in dealing with my issues and challenges. There was a time, if you may correct me, you were one, it was at an NEC meeting that you had to leave abruptly because you couldn't continue. If my memory serves me right, the actual speech that you were giving, the presentation that you were giving, had to be finished off, had to be completed by one of the other top 6 members, because you couldn't. You tried to, but you couldn't stay on your feet. That's how bad it was. And I think that's the first time people realized, from a public perspective, hey, we've been hearing that this guy is not okay, but what is this that we see? And you're someone that generally does not show chinks in your armor. So for the first time, people saw you. What I believe people would have seen you at a weaker footing. And then leading from there, it was the inauguration, where you had to get inaugurated. And we were all sitting in one of the meeting rooms at the house, when your staff members, some of your advisors, your personal aides were saying, look, you can't go, you can't do this because you're not in the position to do so. Your medical staff, more specifically, the doctors were saying, postpone it, this can't happen. And this was on the morning of the inauguration, where you decided, look, I'm carrying on with my duties. Whatever happens. We'll deal with it as we get there. You overcome that, barely, because we could see that you were in a weakened state. You were sitting in that room and you were being attended to, and I was even like, oh, this is real. So that's those are the events leading up to the time where we'd realized that you'd been poisoned, or we'd suspected that you'd been poisoned, because your health deteriorated very quickly after that. There was all sorts of ways that your body was responding or was behaving out of your control. And I'm not going to get into the details of it. So fast forward, we embark on a journey to resolve the issue, and this leads us to Moscow, to Russia. That's a trip that I accompanied you on, and just purely from, it was traumatic for everybody. Not everyone could travel with you at that point, and I made it my duty. So we traveled to Russia to deal with the issues, and there was an excellent medical staff that treated you. I mean, the results speak for themselves. You survived, which was definitely an attempt on your life. It was publicized, but it was brushed under the carpet. And I'm raising this because you're my father at the end of the day. To some people, you're a politician. To some people, you're an enemy. To some people, you are a means to an end as a political figure. To others, you're loved. To some, you're hated. To me, you're my father. So that is the engagement that I have with you on many occasions, including this one that we're having now. We all saw you at your weakest that we've ever seen you in your life. Myself more especially, because I traveled with you and I was there when you were undertaking the medical treatment. What was going through your mind at that time, leading up to being able to get the treatment, and during and after? What went through your mind?
Well, that was one of the, I think, the toughest challenges that I've faced when I was poisoned. Firstly, I was at that time, I was already having got some information that I was poisoned, how I was poisoned. But at the time, I think I was faced with the issue of trying to battle to survive the attack that was made, which was very heavy. I generally, I don't get sick that easily, except flu or whatever. But that time I was indeed sick and I could feel. And one day I could explain in detail how was I feeling, but it was very difficult.
Yes.
When we then, I at that time contacted my friend in a country that we went to say I'm sick, because I knew that the poisoning was not just like a root that was dark and what you call and made it to be a poison, yes, but it was actually a very sophisticated kind of poison. And I knew that my friend, who was a president at that time in his country, would be the only one in the country that will assist me. And that's why I sent a message to him. He sent doctors, which was very quiet, to see me, who then recommended that indeed I should go to a place where we finally went with you. And I knew once I went there, this would be defeated, and it was defeated indeed. And I finally found out that it was poison. There were 3 types of different poisons that were put to me together. Not just one type. Were actually 3 very dangerous. When I looked at them and what they do to the human body, I did not believe that I survived that one, but I did. And I must thank you also, because you represented your siblings by going with me to the country, and you were there all the time, and we came together. This is a story among stories, and I'm sure many and some of the cadres and leaders of the world have died without having an opportunity to tell their story. The reason why I had to be killed up to this time does not stop. It's partly because of the work I've done in the struggle that I was given by the ANC as my organization, that I performed to the best of my ability as a cadre. But secondly, it's because of my beliefs politically about how the countries or our country should be. I joined the struggle when I was very young to liberate South Africa, and I meant it. it was not just to do that for the sake of doing it. It was literally to liberate the country. And I believe and I still believe. And because of my ideology and beliefs and the work I did combined,
yes,
that my enemies thought I should die, and they would have killed like they've killed many, and they've poisoned many. I always say my ancestors have been with me, and my God has been with me, that I'm still alive. I was supposed to have died. I now also know that I was not just poisoned once. Each time the enemy thought I was looking better, they put another dose. In fact, when I write my book, I would say exactly how many doses were given, because as an intelligence operator, I now know how many doses were put. How I did not die. Even the doctors who cured me, they can't believe.
I remember.
If you take the dose that I had in my body, no human being could live.
If I recall correctly, what they said is the set dose and what would normally get rid of someone. You said it was 4 times the amount that they'd given.
Exactly.
Only to find out that the suspicion was he'd been poisoned. I get a phone call saying, "Can you please help?" And I'm saying, "Okay." And this is a serious phone call from serious people. Help in what sense? If we can, we will. If we can't, we'll let you know. Look, sorry, not going to happen. There's a problem, and this had to do. At that time, he was the premier of Mpumalanga. He's now the deputy president, Deputy President Mabuza. And the call wasn't from him, just to be clear. The call and the request was the premier at that time of Mpumalanga was not doing well, health-wise. You have to help. I said, yeah, but okay, help in what way? I'm more than happy to help. I'm not a doctor, but whatever other way I can help, I'll help. So the story centers around a period where he was not feeling well. And this is what we later discovered, and he disappeared from public life. It was basically to get him to people that can help him as soon as possible. And I said, okay, fine. Let's do it. Whatever it is that I can do, what do you need from me? Look, what we'll need from you is an airlifting from Nelspruit and passage on a private plane, because this thing needs to be kept as quiet, as clandestine as possible, through to Moscow so he can seek further medical treatment in Moscow. I said, okay, that's odd. What's the problem? Only to find out that the suspicion was he'd been poisoned. I said, okay, fine. Give me a few moments. Let me see what plan can happen. He said, look, when you get back to us, it needs to be a positive plan, because we've exhausted all possibilities. We've asked every private player that we know, and we've asked every public player, so government institutions, ministries, whoever it is that they spoke to. And they are not able to help us because it is a bit of a hot potato issue. And I was like, okay, extra pressure, but let me see what I can do. So
you've disappeared a little bit.
You've
disappeared a little bit.
Are you there, sir?
Yeah, we are there now.
Yeah, okay. So
you ended up when we were saying all other players have failed to ask.
Yes, yeah. These players were government institutions, ministries, as well as private players who had the means to fulfill such a such an exercise. Anyways, we agreed to do it. And I say, okay, fine. There's a team in place. It'll be done. This is my guarantee. Wherever he's going to, we'll get him there. So there was no option but myself at the time. And, I felt pressured because it was a very high level extraction, if I may use that term, which we had to do. And, it was in line with saving life. That's something that if I was in that position, I would have hoped that someone would go out on a limb to help me out if I had nowhere else to go. So anyways, make the necessary arrangements. And now Premier Mabuza could not travel by road from Nelspruit to Johannesburg because that's the only way that we could get out. We had to airlift him by helicopter. Now the further issue is there was obviously a threat on his life because he'd been poisoned. This information hadn't been out in the public domain. So we'd arranged for an helicopter extraction from I think a high school that was just outside of Nelspruit. So it's not too obvious because we had to send in our own modes of transportation, in this case, the helicopter. And it would be obvious if there was a landing and an extraction at that point. So we get the team to go and do it. They airlift him from, I don't know the name of the high school. I wasn't there because I was waiting at OR Tambo. Extraction happens. So now this is, if I recall correctly, a few moments later, he gets airlifted. He's on his way to OR Tambo. Now a storm is brewing. Literally, there's a storm. It's serious clouds. There's always heavy cloud cover around the Kempton Park, Boksburg area. So anyways, it was quite a strong electrical storm. And the reason I'm mentioning that is the helicopter did not make it to OR Tambo like it was supposed to. It landed somewhere outside of Kempton Park. I'm not sure. I wasn't on the helicopter. And when we got the phone call that they wouldn't be able to fly through the electric storm, which sent drivers out to go to pick up the Premier. So they picked him up. They get to the airport. This is now, we are waiting. Well, I'm waiting at Fireblade, the now infamous Fireblade private passenger terminal that's attached to the international airport. I'm sitting in the plane. He arrives. We welcome him because now it's raining. And when I'm saying we, there's pilots and one or two other people that I traveled with at the time. We literally had to carry him into the plane. And for me, I was shocked at what I saw. I didn't expect to see what I'd seen. Walking stick, and he could barely walk on his own. Carried him, took him to the back of the plane where we set him upright. And at this point, we're like, okay, we've got wheels up at this particular time. Let's get ready to move. Now I can see the panic ensuing from the captains, the pilots of the plane. And eventually they come to me and then they're like, look, we're not sure what's going on, but is this gentleman okay? I say, no, he's fine. And they're like, we obviously, because of the passenger manifest in his passport, we obviously know he is. So this is a very high profile trip, but he's not looking well. Is there a problem? And I'd say to the pilots, no, this gentleman is here. We need to get him out. We are on our way to Russia to deal with this problem. So that's not up for discussion. And I could see the discomfort in the pilot's face. But it's like, okay, let's see what we can do about this. So as we're sitting in the plane, the storm gets worse. We start up the engines to take off. We have technical problems. And the technical problem at that time was with one of the engines, and we needed to get a team to come check it out. So I'm like, okay, this is now starting to get very tricky. So as they're checking the engine out, we sit and we actually ended up having dinner on the plane. We didn't even take off because, we've been sitting, waiting, and, we're all hungry and we're eating. Now, during that period, I'm having a discussion. Obviously, I'm trying to find out what's going on. And he wasn't in a good state. He could hardly speak. But he managed to utter a few words. And he looked at me and he said, I didn't know who had made this plan. I didn't expect to see you, meaning myself. But now that I see it's you, I feel very comfortable and I'm happy. Because if you are attached to this exercise, then it means your father's attached to it. And I appreciate this operation being made possible. And I said, no, this is my story and you are in the safest hands you can be in at this point. And then he relaxes a bit. Immigration officials come to the plane because now we've missed our departure time. They need to get certain documentation, and you may not be aware, but at that time, I don't know what it is now, at Fireblade, they didn't have the capacity, or they weren't granted the permission by the different institutions, departments, I'm assuming Home Affairs, to stamp people's passports, just from an immigration perspective. So we had to actually get off the plane and send one of the buses to take the bus to the actual main terminal building at OR Tambo. And we actually walked through. So now we're pushing him on a wheelchair. Now it's late. It's a bit late. So fortunately, it was a bit quiet in the airport, and we managed to cover his head a bit so he's not visible and people cannot see who he is. Otherwise, it would have created certain issues, in my view. So we get to there, we clear customs and immigration. And on our way out, I still saw an old friend of mine. His name is Mukhtar. If he watches this and he recollects that period, he'll now know who was in the wheelchair, because he was looking at me like, hey, what's going on here? There's no one else moving around here. Where you guys going? I'm like, no, just I'll speak to you later. We like to catch our flight. So we pushed him onto the plane, onto the bus with his wheelchair. We get onto the plane. And at that point, the pilots were like, okay, we've gotten clearance. It's going to be wheels up in the next 10 minutes. We've got our slot to take off. And that's when we realized, okay, we're good to go. So at this point, why I'm mentioning this story is because, there's a lot of risky stuff that people do. And the risk at that time that I'm sure you'll agree with is, and this was, I think, the issue that the pilots, they never said anything, but to me at least, the issue that was going to be very controversial is we have someone that's on an aeroplane that's not medically cleared to fly. Right. So if anything happens in between our point of departure and point of arrival, his death will be on my hands, because I'm the go-to person when it comes to this exercise. So if the Premier had lost his life, me being the last person in contact with him, and the Premier being in my care, the buck would have stopped with me, and I'd have to face the consequences, as I understand it. And I think that's what the captain was alluding to. And at that point, that was irrelevant. It was immaterial. We were continuing with this plan. So as we were sitting on the plane, we were just having discussions, and I was trying to understand, but what is going on? And he said, look, my son, I believe that they've got to me. I've been poisoned. I've been in hospital. I believe at that time it was almost 3 months. And 3 months that he hadn't been seen in public. And he was just saying, I've been poisoned and I'm upset that this has happened. And I'm thinking to myself, but why would this happen? And why to you? And, what am I doing here? And he said, no, he has come to see the reality of life, where people that you trust and people that you've worked with do not want to have you around. Because he recollected a story where he said he was laying in his hospital bed. Now at this point, he's whatever he had, it was on a drip, and ventilators, I don't know, whatever the situation was in the hospital. And he was in a not a fully comatose state, but he said he wasn't active. He wasn't he didn't have any activity, he didn't have any movement in his body and in his speech. But what he said is, as he was laying and sleeping, because he was laying there with his eyes closed, even when he was awake at times, just what else was he supposed to do? And as people came to visit him, his trusted people, they were speaking, and this is where it struck me. I'm like, we have a big problem here. He was speaking, and the people that were speaking that were trusted to him were basically speaking about their plans post his death. So now they're planning for his eventual death. And he said he didn't see them, but obviously he knew their voices, and he could remember their voices. And the next thing that he said is like, and I can't blame him for it. He said, if and when I come out of this, I'm going to find these people, and they're going to pay for this, whatever that means. So anyways, I'm like, look, I can't argue with that. I would have been just as upset as he was, and I would have probably said the exact same thing, because people are infringing on his life. So anyways, we take off. We get to Moscow. Fortunately, he survived the flight. We prepared the bed for him. He had a good rest in the cabin in the back, and we went to the other room, and we left him there. Occasionally have something to eat, something to drink. But for the most time, he was just in his own zone and comfortable enough that he was in safe hands. So we land in Moscow, and then immediately from the airport, it was a medical team, and we went to the hospital. And now I'm thinking to myself, now I'm there for the second time. The first time was with you for the exact same reason. And now the second time I'm there with the former premier, the current deputy president. And going through the same rigmarole, going through the same processes and procedures of the protocols that come with the medical treatment. And it was very odd because I was his minder. I was pushing him everywhere. I'm the one that had to carry him, yes, with the help of other staff, but getting him his shoes, removing his shoes, sometimes having to undress him. He was not in a great state. I'm just mentioning these details because I think you need to understand, and people need to understand, that it was really, really touch and go, just like it was for you. It was touch and go for the now deputy president. And the whole time, he was obviously thankful to myself and to yourself, for whatever reason. And I said, no, it's not the time for that. As long as we fulfill our given mandate. I stayed with him for about 5 days, maybe 6, and his medical program was going to continue over a few weeks. But the whole time, after he'd done his test and he felt like the worst was over, after a few days, he obviously wanted to get back to South Africa, to continue where he left off. People were expecting, because not the duration of the trip from when it left up until we got back, no one, I'm not saying no one, but the only a very few people knew. But the general person did not know where he was. And I think that's exactly how it played out. And that was the whole idea of it happening. So they did all the blood tests, drained blood. They did all these things, and watching it is quite a scary scenario. I mean, some of the equipment and machinery that was put on, and then how you responded to some of it, how he responded to some of it. It's a scary thing to see, and how he was detailing it and the pain that he was in. The poison affects people in different ways, but this one was a slow poison that was killing him from the inside, through his core, and somehow it was affecting his legs. So that was what the mobility problem was. So I leave Moscow back to South Africa. I think it was 5 or 6 days in, because I needed to get back to doing what I was doing at the time. And the agreement was, when he's ready to come back, It will be the same extraction arrangement, pick up and drop off. So that's what we do. This time round, and it's going to be controversial what I'm saying to some people, but this is a fact, and it's public knowledge. There's a manifest, so it's not like I'm trying to get stuff that's not out there. So it's a long flight to Moscow, and I'm literally flying alone this time round. So I invited one of my business partners, Mr. Tony Gupta, and I said, "Look, I'm going back to Russia. I need company. Are you coming?" And he's like, "Look, if there's anything I can do, I'm more than happy to do it. You're my brother. I'm coming with you. I'm going to support you and do whatever needs to be done. Let's go." So off we go. So this time around, I've got company that is not relevant to the core team we had at the time. We get to Russia. We spend a night. I think it was in one evening, 2 maybe, but we're not there for longer than 2 days. And that's when we receive him and put him back, the premier back on the plane, and we make our way back to South Africa. Now, when we get back to South Africa, there's the alerts are still out. Like, look, this thing is very quiet. He needs to lay low for 2 reasons. One, obviously, people cannot know where he is from a for publicity's sake. And 2, there's still people that put him in that position that need to be identified, and he needs to be protected in that way. So from the day we arrived back in South Africa it was up to a week, there's a few days, you're looking at your watch like you got to go somewhere.
Oh,
I'm just joking.
Not yet.
No, that was a joke. So he spent a few days at one of the guest houses in Saxonal. That he was well looked after, and his safety was there. He was there with his wife, so he was in good hands. I'm mentioning this story because he's someone that is, was dear to a lot of us, and still is. And I'm speaking from my perspective because that sort of event that happened was a very serious event. There's been a breakdown in my relationship with him, and not from my side, from his side. My understanding of it, I clearly don't know. Maybe one day myself and him will have that discussion, because he's someone that I've always held in high regards. And I'm not asking him for any favors. I've never asked him for anything. I was part of a team that saved his life. I'm not looking for preferential treatment, but I used to speak to him from time to time to check how he's doing post the operation that we embarked on. And I'm trying to think if I'd seen him after that or not. I'm not sure that I'd seen him, but we were on telephonic interaction and communication. And then from nowhere, it just stopped. And I realized, there's clearly a problem. I'm not sure what the problem is, but one day we definitely will find out. So that's just my recollection of one of the stories that I haven't shared. And I just wanted to share that because I think it's important to do so.
How I survived, and I say it was a miracle.
One of those poisons was not Durban poison, the marijuana. No, you don't smoke. That was a joke. That was a joke.